All right. Well, look, let's get right into because it was a pretty competitive weekend in boxing. Showtime, DAZN, and PBC all had fights. So you want to talk about? Let's get right into this Joshua Fury announcement though first, because
Sure.
yeah, tell
Well,
us what's going
the,
on with
the
that
day
fight.
the day we're recording on Sunday, the 16th of May, Tyson Fury put up a notice on his a little video on his social media, very positive, saying he spoke to Prince Khalid of Saudi Arabia. He didn't say. I think there's more than one Prince Khalid, but I think the guy that he might have spoken to had been the head of Khalid bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, had been the head of Skill Challenge Entertainment, although I'm not sure if he's still doing that and what the status of that company is. Remember, this guy's a prince, so he's part of the ruling family, and it's not exactly like they have regular websites and want everybody to know what's going on. But Skill Challenge Entertainment was the promotion and production company that put on the fight in December 2019 between Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz Jr. And Eddie Hearn, the promoter of Joshua, praises him to the skies. So the questions with Tyson Fury and a lot of the non-information and misinformation had been put out there had to do with, is this money guaranteed? Because if Aram has mentioned this, a lot of people have had this experience before. There are a number of people around the world, and I think it's true in the U.S. also, who go to these promoters and they say, oh, yeah, we want to put on this fight. We have all this money. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And they say, okay, if they don't know the person or the company, then they check them out and they never get confirmation that they have the money. So for whatever reason, people do that. Again, it's boxing, so you can
It's
have all this
boxing,
kind of
exactly.
Alice. It's boxing, so you can have all this crazy stuff. But this company produced that whole event and that whole fight. Obviously, in 2020, everything slowed down with the pandemic. But Saudi Arabia, as we know, is committed to their 2030 plan to decrease dependency on petroleum revenues, both because it's going to run out in a couple of decades. The use of petroleum products, fossil fuels, we know a lot of countries are trying to reduce that or even end that. And so they're looking to the future. They have all this money that they've accumulated through the years of being OPEC and selling off all this oil. So what are they gonna do with it? And they want to develop the country as both a tourist and sports and entertainment destination. They're still going to keep it as a religious destination, but they want to show to the world, and a lot of this is hype and smoke and mirrors, that they're a modern country. So you can bring your big events. They're bringing a number of events have been over there, Western concerts, auto racing, things like that. But boxing is something that gets a very special kind of attention. So they want to bring number of a number of cards over there before, and the questions are going to be, all right, do they really have the money for this? Because this isn't Joshua Ruiz to the rematch. This isn't another fight they had, Amir Khan versus Billy Dibb. It's not Callum Smith versus George Groves. This is clearly one thing everyone agrees on. The biggest fight in boxing this year, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, heavyweight title unification, the top two heavyweights in the world. Virtually everybody agrees on that. And it's going to be one of the biggest sporting events of the year. And if the Olympics are canceled and don't happen, it could arguably be the biggest sporting event in the world this year. Certainly will be one of the biggest. So there's going to be an enormous amount of money to stage this fight, and then they have to work out the details because now everybody's saying it's going to be August the 14th in Saudi Arabia. Well, that's in the summer where it's obviously
Right.
extremely hot in Saudi Arabia. So where do you do the fight? Eddie Hearn said the Saudis are talking about creating a purpose-built stadium. It might be outdoors. If they do it at night, it gets down to about 75 degrees or so Fahrenheit, about 24 degrees Celsius. Do they want to do that outdoors, or will it be an indoor venue, or will it be one of the indoor venues that exist already in not in Riyadh or near Riyadh, the capital, which is around where the Joshua Ruiz fight is? Is it going to be in Jeddah, which is in the western part of Saudi Arabia, that's already they're developing as a tourist destination and is on the Red Sea, where it's supposed to be a little cooler, and they have indoor uh, arenas where they had some of these other fights, but it's not going to be the huge crowd that you're going to get, say, the obvious place, putting it in Wembley Stadium in London in front of 90,000 fans.
Right.
It's going to be a much small, even if they allow 100% capacity, it's going to be a much smaller crowd. But the Saudis, to get all this attention, probably are willing to overpay for it. And it's not a normal business venture where they sit down and say, "Well, we can't lose money on the fight." Well, they think all the publicity and the discussion such as we're having will convince a certain amount of people to look the other way at their egregious human rights violations,
Hmm.
the war crimes they've committed in Yemen, the war is still going on there, and so forth and so on. But there are also a number of other legitimate issues. Let's assume they have the money. Let's assume they can do all of this, and we're sort of getting of of the negotiations, this information on it, and it's not signed yet. Even Aram a couple of weeks ago, remember some of the media was saying the fight's dead in the water. Well, it's it's been exhumed. I guess it was never dead in the water. The negotiations, anyone that's in any negotiations know that these things go up and down. So the questions are: is the money, if the money is actually there, how reliable are they? And this might be a specific question for Tyson Fury, something that I haven't seen really discussed. Tyson Fury performed there already. It wasn't a real fight, it was a WWE show at the end of October 2019. So he's familiar with going to Saudi Arabia, doing all of that. But there was an incident after that between the WWE and Saudi Arabia where their performers were loaded onto a plane, supposed to go back to the United States, and they were supposed to fly them back home to the U.S. in time for a show that they were doing in Buffalo, New York. The flight sat there, the plane sat there for many hours on the ground, and a number of the performers were going to social media and contacting people saying they felt they were being held hostage. There was some financial dispute that took place that's still not clear because we're dealing with the government of Saudi Arabia and WWE, which are not exactly the most transparent organizations. The WWE had the one version said they cut off their live feed of the show early. Another one said there was a payment issue. It's not entirely clear at this point, but their performers were caught in the middle of this and stuck on the plane for several hours. They came up with a cover story saying, "Oh, it was just a technical issue with the plane." Well, that's
Right.
not what leaked out. So some of the people, from what I understand, who are on that plane were able to, the richer ones, make their own arrangements and get the hell out of there. In other words, just easily charter a private plane. I think one of the guys had a private plane and he took some people with them. So the question is, if something goes wrong, now that's a scripted show, obviously. If something goes wrong, is there going to be any problem getting out of there? Because they
Well,
didn't let the
what do you
plane leave
think?
until
What do you think could go wrong at this Joshua Fury after they
fight
finish
could be
fighting?
over in 1 or 2 rounds. Because fight could be over in 1 or 2 rounds because of a cut or a low blow or a controversial ending or something that we've seen happen. It's boxing. Anything could happen. If they're going to be paying, I don't know that these figures that are being leaked to the media are true, but if
About
they're
the
going to be
purse?
paying an enormous fee and the fight's over in 2 rounds because of a cut, what's going to be their reaction? Now, to if this happened to most people, obviously you'd be disappointed, but we understand ahead of time, as you said, it's boxing, and we arrange a rematch at some point. That may not be so easy to do, and we're not dealing again with a straight up business relationship. So that's one thing they might want to get straightened out in the details of the contract, because long they've agreed on the basics, a 50-50 split for the fight. They're bringing in an enormous amount of money. They still have to make the details of the stadium. Even the broadcast details are not finalized, but they're leaking out what's likely to happen. The UK pay per view, which would be the biggest because you have two British fighters, would be a joint pay per view between Sky Sports and which has Joshua, and BT Sport, which has Fury. It will be sort of like a couple of years ago when HBO and Showtime worked together with Mayweather and Pacquiao, and before that with Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson. It'll be along those lines. And then for the U.S., the fight will be on in the late afternoon, early evening, because if they do it, Saudi Arabia is a couple hours ahead of the UK. So if they do the fight to start, say, at 11 p.m. on a Saturday night in the UK, that's going to be 5 hours earlier for the Eastern time zone and 8 hours earlier for the Pacific time zone in the United States. Aram had previously said it will be on an ESPN Plus pay-per-view, not the Zone in the U.S., but the Zone is likely to handle the streaming of it outside the US and the UK for international audiences, since they're supposed to be in about 200 countries now. So those are things that are not obstacles if everybody understands we got to get this done, because if you don't get it done, you get nothing. So they should be able to work these kind of things out. The other thing that hasn't been talked about much, I talked about it on the article I did on my Patreon page, is the question of safety and security. Not so much only a little bit internally in Saudi Arabia, because there have been terrorist incidents within Saudi Arabia, not from the government, but from different people. But you still have the war in Yemen going, where Saudi Arabia is on one side, Iran is on the other side, and there have been rockets fired at Saudi Arabia that for a while shut down a lot of their oil production. For a while, the airport in Jeddah, the King Abdul Aziz Airport, was shut down recently because rockets were fired near there and it was unsafe. And if they're doing it in Jeddah, that airport I believe is open now, but they got to look at things like this. Now, from what I've read, Saudi Arabia and Iran are holding secret preliminary talks to chill out the bad blood between them. A lot of it is because Saudi Arabia feels the U.S. is just not going to give them carte blanche, as they pretty much did under Trump. So they're looking to shore up their alliances, or at least get some type of détente going. And then, of course, you have the current situation uh, in between Israel and Palestine. Nobody knows where that's going to go at this point, how much that's going to involve. That's inflamed a lot of uh, a lot of tensions. Will that have any effect, say, on international travel? We don't know at this point. So there are a lot of wild cards when you're going to the Middle East. So my guess is that they're going to want some of these things that are not as sexy to discuss specified in their contract, such as, okay, after the fight's over, how long do they stay there? How are they going to get back? The WWE show that I talked about was a little different because apparently they wanted to bring their performers back right after the show to get them back to the U.S. I imagine that's not going to be an issue for Fury and Joshua
Yeah, it
that they have
shouldn't
to
be an
leave
issue
during the fight.
because that's usually negotiated in the contract. You know, they get round trip
Yes,
tickets for the team.
right. And how many tickets you get, how many hotel
Right,
rooms, all this
right.
kind of stuff. But since there was a problem last time, I don't that if I were Tyson Fury, and more likely his management, and they understood that, and they probably have more detailed background information in terms of what happened. They don't want any repetition of anything like this.
Right, right.
So you're going to have to. Maybe it'll be a private plane. There were pictures of Fury leaving on a private plane. He went to Texas for the Billy Joe Saunders fight. So
And he had a
maybe they'll do
black
that.
eye
But
too.
it looks yeah. Well, he was sparring.
Yeah.
And that's the other questions. He had some pictures of him sparring. He had a black eye. He had a cut on his face. At least it looked like a laceration.
Hmm.
And he looked like he had been, doing his training at McDonald's with a rubber tire around his waist.
Well, even the
So,
video you tweeted out today, he looked the you could still see the bump under his eye.
right. But he has a couple of months for that heal. So we'll see if there's an official announcement. When there is, my guess is it'll still be like a Zoom announcement because Fury's been training in Las Vegas mainly, and Joshua training in the UK, and of course Aram is in Las Vegas. Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn are in the UK, so we'll see what they actually put together. They're going to do a standard press conference where you have everybody there, and then the other wild card is what happens with the coronavirus situation. How much will the pandemic be alleviated but in the next couple of months by the time of August? And what we're starting to find out in sports is that there are what are called these breakthrough infections. And this got a lot of publicity just
Right.
with the New York Yankees. Gleyber Torres, starting shortstop, and 8 staff people, including several field coaches and then some office people, all got infected with the coronavirus, and all of them had been inoculated with the Johnson and Johnson vaccine, which is only 70% something effective
Right.
anyway. So there haven't been any reports of people being seriously ill from it. But if you want to be in top-notch shape for the heavyweight championship fight, you're not going to want to do it with the coronavirus. It's obviously going to severely limit you, even if you're asymptomatic. So they have to worry about worry about that. They have to deal with all these different issues, and we'll see if there's an announcement this coming week. Eddie Hearn has been saying since December it's going to be in a week or two. We're making an announcement, and it's become farcical at this point, and people are really sick of it. But it looks like both sides now are confirming that they're very, very close, that they've agreed on the basics, and they have to work out some of these details. And the Saudis have to decide what they're really going to build a new stadium or arena for this.
That
And
is
that, of course, is
crazy.
going to bring a that's what
That
they
is
did for the
crazy.
the Joshua Ruiz fight. But they did that in December, where it was cooler, and they tore the stadium down.
Oh,
Right, it was an outdoor stadium right afterwards. Are they going to do it for this? And then it's going to bring attention, since, again, this fight's going to have so much tension. What are going to be the working conditions for the workers in Saudi Arabia rushing to put up this stadium or arena for this fight? Or are they going to use one of the existing indoor arenas in Jeddah where where they've held these other fights? So,
So
gonna,
let me ask you this. With a 50-50 split, you said they're doing a 50-50 split. What does that equate to in dollars? Like, what's their purse going to be? Did they
we
say?
don't know. We don't know because they're throwing around these big figures of $150 million. There's no way to confirm that, and the contract isn't even fully signed yet. So how much are the Saudis paying for this? It, unless some public company comes out and is audited, unless somebody can leak some reliable information, we're not going to know. It's boxing, so that's probably, if I had to guess, an inflated number.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, if they're outbidding, Eddie Hearn said there were a number of other international offers that were made. And the guess is they were from Dubai and Singapore and some other places, and they might have had offers from the United States, where again, it's a crapshoot in terms of how many fans can be there. So you do it in Vegas, how many fans will be allowed in at this point? We don't know. And Hearn said that's what happened with Wembley, because he wanted to know, can you guarantee that there'll be 100,000 people there? And they can't, because it might happen, but you might not know till a couple of weeks beforehand. For example, the some of the football playoffs taking place in the UK up to about 2 weeks before. Now it'll probably be about a month before, if they do it August 14th, the proposed date of this fight. And they were going to hope to have at best 50% of the attendance there allowed in. What will it be on August 14th? We don't know the answer to that. So if you're having this big kind of venture, you don't want to have question marks. So we'll see what happens. But when all this talking is done, people are just just sick of this stuff already. We'll see if they make the announcement, and then you're going to have the big issue: who's going to win the fight? And then we're going to have the other issue of, are people is there any kind of boycott or opposition for human rights reasons? And there was some talk of
I
it,
doubt it.
of a campaign of doing it. Yeah, there were apparently people even in the WWE that spoke out about this human rights issue in Saudi, and not everybody wanted to perform there. We haven't heard anything from Fury or Joshua or the teams, and again, they've both been there before, so we can't expect much. Maybe they could convince somebody like Joshua to say something, but maybe he won't. But there's going to be pressure on them, because particularly for Joshua, with the image he has as a role model for people, good-looking guy, honorable and all of that, is he going to speak up on? He's in a position to. Is going to speak up on these issues.
Well, I hope he does, but I doubt it. We'll see. He'll probably be quiet, I'm sure. But
Somebody's going to have to ask him about it. We'll see if when they
well,
start
aren't you
doing
going
these
to be
press.
doing a call with him?
Yeah, but I don't know if they're going to call on me. What they've been doing in the Zoom era is just reducing the number of media people to ask questions, and only allowing, this is boxing and other sports and other forms of entertainment, just allowing people to have access who are going to be part of the show, who are not going to really ask the hard questions, and cut them off,
Right.
and cut them off from access if they do raise anything. So we'll see. And again, I don't know if they're going to do this in 3 months. I don't know that they're going to need to do like a worldwide media tour
Right.
as they've done before these other fights, because they had a press conference in New York and other places before Joshua and Ruiz. Another thing that also at that press conference, I asked Eddie Hearn, is there a Saudi Arabia boxing commission? Who's going to regulate the fight? He said, oh, yeah, there's one. There's been no evidence that there ever was a Saudi Arabia boxing commission.
Who needs a stinking commission?
Right. And so, again, you have the monarchy is the government behind this. So, what are they going to regulate themselves?
Right.
Because they're putting up the money for this and they're promoting this. And if there were any government commission, they'd have to approve it. It's not like you have as bad as these commissions in in places like North America or the British Boxing Board of Control. There's some independence that they have. You're not going to have that in a monarchy. So what they might do is they did in these other fights is bring in officials from from the British Boxing Board of Control, from people who are involved with the state athletic commissions in North America or the U.S. and have them and have people agree who the officials are for this and the judges, because knowing these fights, what if it go? What if it's a close fight? What if it, who are the judges going to be
Right.
if it goes to a decision, which is certainly a realistic one of the realistic possibilities. That has all that stuff has to be determined. The Saudis, as far as I can tell, I've seen no evidence of them setting up any kind of independent commission. I don't know if they realize the necessity for that. So that's where we're at with that. All these are kind of issues that the lawyers, the promoters, and managers are not real, the sexy, high, hot button issues that people like to talk about, and they might be
Right.
pushed in the background. But sometimes, as you know, the governance, as we see every week, if you watch boxing, comes into play in terms of who's regulating these, who's deciding what the scores are, who's doing the matchmaking in these fights. There may be an undercard. I'm sure there'll be an undercard in this fight. Who's
So,
going to approve the fights? Are they going to
right.
be mismatches?
And is there going to be what do you call it? The VADA testing?
That has to be negotiated, but I think there's supposed to be, because Joshua has insisted upon that in the past, and Fury is a WBC champion, and they have their clean boxing program. And
Hmm.
again, everything was disrupted and interrupted with the pandemic. But if you're going to fight for the WBC title, you're supposed to be able to pass these tests.
Right.
But that's done separately from any commission. But if you look at even the fights that were this weekend on Showtime, you look at the judges' scorecards, people, and the week before and all this, there's a lot of controversy. Sometimes the right fighter wins anyway, but
Hmm.
sometimes the scores are absurd. For example, you had the fight the with the first fight was on the Showtime televised card with Martinez and Burgos, and
So
this
just a
was
little bit.
Xavier Martinez is a Floyd Mayweather fighter, and Juan Carlos Burgos is a veteran fighter that's been around for a while. And all the scores, and while Martinez deserved to win the fight, virtually everybody who watched it thought the 99-91 scores that all three judges had was preposterous. That Burgos did a lot more than win one round. And in fact, he had been robbed before by another Martinez, Roman Rocky Martinez. He fought in Madison Square Garden in 2013, and he lost. I think it was a split decision there. That was a really bad decision, because most people watching it thought Burgos had won that fight. This fight, Martinez deserved to win, but he's a young guy. He showed a lot of holes in his game. I think a lack of footwork is something he has to work on. He was hit an awful lot in this fight. Even Abner Maris, who was doing the announcing, said that Xavier could have made the fight easier for himself. But if that fight had been much closer, he was going to go to Martinez no matter what happened. And that has to do with who these judges are and who's officiating it. So
But
that's
Burgos took
something
a
that
beating, though. I mean, he took a pounding, so it was a race.
more in the second half of the fight. Yes,
Yeah,
I'm not arguing about who should have won the fight. I'm
yeah,
saying that 99-91 is preposterous.
right.
And the only way Burgos was going to win that fight is if he knocked him out a couple of times. And
Exactly.
it didn't
That ended
happen.
up happening.
So
Right,
there was only some grumbling about it because the old phrase, the right guy won.
right. Did
So
you
that's
watch
just, that's
the
just one.
Did you watch the Africans? What's the guy's name? I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Boutsi?
Joshua Buatsi.
Boatsi, yeah.
Buatsi. I watched highlights of that fight, and it was such a mismatch. The guy Dos Santos was not in the same league at all as Joshua Buatsi, who was a prospect. He's trying to get a world title fight, and when the fight was over and he knocked him out, Dos Santos was crying in the ring. He just couldn't
Oh wow.
believe it. He must have believed in himself, and he was just in completely over his head.
Right.
So if he's going to be anything, he's going to have to go back and work hard. But I don't know. He's based in France. I don't know how far he's going to go. Boazzi is the guy that Eddie Hearn and all these are really pushing. So this was a showcase fight
Right.
for him, which he clearly easily dominated. And then I think of all these fights that took place Saturday, the Luis Neri fight with Brandon Figueroa was quite a good fight to watch. If I don't know if you got a chance to see that one,
No, I missed those.
but
I missed almost all of the fights. I caught a little bit of the heavyweight fight with Solomon Dakris and the Bulgarian heavyweight Manev. I think his
I
last
missed
name is.
that. But the if you can go back and you want to see a really good fight, the Neri fight against Figueroa. I'm not sure who the favorite was in that fight, but that was something that was really competitive. And Neri was a guy a couple of years ago when he was fighting at 118, was built up as a uh, a budding superstar in boxing, a very scary fighter. He went to Japan, and that's where a lot of controversy developed in his fights because he went to Japan and he was fighting Shinsuke Yamanaka for 118-pound title fights. And the first fight, who had been undefeated and was a star in Japan. So you have this Mexican fighter going to Japan and knocking him out in the fourth round. Then after the fight, he tested positive for a PED, which is really looked down upon, even more so in Japan than the United States. And then he said it was from contaminated food. And eventually they said, yeah, it was, which raises the question of the validity of some of these tests, or was he telling the truth? There were always questions about this. So they
How
said,
would he
all
get
right, look,
steroids in your food? How do you get performance
from
enhancing?
Mexico,
Oh,
if
please.
you eat meat in Mexico,
Oh, I
you
see.
can just get it from just normal,
Right.
regular food there. And in some other countries too. In China, I doubt you can get it in Japan, but he's based in Mexico. So they said, all right, uh, that was a screwy ending. So we'll have a rematch. That was in 2017. So the rematch was in 2000 in the Kokogikan, which is in Tokyo, which is the Grand Sumo Hall. They have obviously other events there. And this was for the 118-pound title, the bantamweight title. And Neri shows up overweight. He's 3 pounds overweight. Now, you know, with that weight, you go from 118, 122 is super bantamweight. That's the next weight class. He was a whole weight class above Yamanaka, and he knocks him out in the second round. But what did you know? What did it really mean? Because he was overweight, so he couldn't get that title. So it was from those two incidents, he was disgraced in Japan.
Mm.
So finally, he said, "All right, I got to go up, you know, eventually to 122." He fought a couple more times at 118, but he was viewed, even with this controversy, as a young guy who was a killer, a rising star. And he, Figueroa was a guy taller and leaner, but who was in the shadow of his brother Omar Figueroa, and not as well known, and had not fought anybody before on the level of Neri. Neri was viewed as a guy that's easily ranked in the top 10. So, again, I don't know what the odds were in this fight. Neri was the one viewed as more of a power puncher. And so the question was, is Figueroa going to be able to use his his reach and his height in keeping Neri away? And in the beginning of the fight, he couldn't do it. In the beginning of the fight, Neri was getting in, landing a lot of body shots. Neri's a southpaw. Figueroa was switching back and forth between orthodox and southpaw. And he and Figueroa were both missing a lot of punches. But it seemed to do when they got on the inside that Neri was doing better. And after a few rounds, it looked like Figueroa was able to adjust to this. And Neri, even at this higher weight, looked like he was starting to gas a little bit and was missing a lot more. And Figueroa was starting to land more punches. And the end came in the seventh round with a knockout. It was a left uppercut body shot, and there was a delayed reaction. I'm not sure if it was to the solar plexus or a liver
Wow.
shot, but he landed the shot, and then a second or two later, Neri crumpled to the canvas. The referee counted to 10. He could not get up in time for 10,
Wow.
and it was a knockout victory for the young rising star Brandon Figueroa at 218 of the seventh round. And this unified two of these cockamamie belts because he won the WBC belt. He had one of the regular WBA belt, which is, again, there are two WBA belts in this division. If people you people don't know boxing, you're going to hear that. How can a sanctioning body have two world champions in the same division? It's a WBA because they have a
That is
super
crazy.
world title and a anyway. So this sets up a fight now, which Showtime had been promoting in September, where Figueroa will be fighting Stephen Fulton, who has a WBO title, and this will unify three of the belts. But the IBF belt and the Super WBA belt, if you follow me, are held by Akhmadaliev, who won his title last year when he defeated Danny Roman, who was on the co-feature on this.
Hmm.
So Akhmadaliev is fighting more with DAZN and Eddie Hearn. So this is a PBC card, as you mentioned. So if you're going to have the Figueroa Fulton winner, and that's one of these fights, frankly, there could be rematches or trilogies from. But if you want to have a fighter unify all four of these body belts, will the PBC people and Showtime work with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing? We don't know. They might be more willing to do so when we're talking about super bantamweight, 122 pounds. But again, it's boxing's politics getting in the way of what people want to see. Who's the best in this division? Because this is a very exciting division. You have a number of young, up and coming fighters. Their fights are entertaining. They're very visual to watch. This Showtime card was really, and it was predictable, but really one of the best cards that's been on in a long time. on U.S. television. I don't know what we don't have the ratings yet, but if you're a boxing fan, I would recommend if you have Showtime, they probably have it streaming up on their website somewhere, and I know they do repeats on the Showtime TV network. Watch this card, even if you know the results, because all three of the televised fights were entertaining fights. Even the Danny Roman Ricardo Espinoza fight started off the first couple of rounds. It looked like Espinoza was really active and might be able to pull off an upset, but he faded down the road, and Roman got a unanimous decision. So it was a lot of action. It was a lot of fun to watch these fights.
Right on, Eddie.
Of course, the other fight, uh, the other fight for the World Heavyweight
Oh my God.
Championship.
You must be about to talk about that Lovejoy fight.
Yeah, Christopher Lovejoy, who came in over 300 pounds,
Oh my God.
who who had only fought before in Tijuana, Mexico, and fights that apparently almost all of them there's no video of, and fought unknown opponents, gets a fight against Mahmoud Manuel Char, who holds, I think it's called the WBA title in recess and heavyweight or something like that, who hadn't fought since 2017 because his last fight he tested positive for PED, but it got overturned on some procedural issue, and then he had fights fall through, and then at one point Char actually had been stabbed by somebody. So all these delays. Lovejoy is promoted by Don King. Lovejoy says the contract. This is boxing stuff. This is like Alice in Wonderland come to life. He said his contract ran out with King. King put out a statement saying it hasn't. If you fight, this fight was in Cologne, Germany. If you fight, I'm going to sue you. So we'll see what happens. So this fight was not even made available on U.S. TV. I think in a couple of countries had the fight on some networks. And of course, when these fights aren't on TV, YouTube is our friend, and we could see them on YouTube.
Right.
And if you watch the fight, if you really want to watch the fight, because you have to watch a heavyweight fight, it won't take very long. The first round was a little feeling out.
Yeah.
Char threw some punches. Second, didn't. Second round, Char got Lovejoy in the corner, threw a couple punches. Lovejoy crumpled down. The referee stopped the fight, and that was it in the middle of the second round. So Lovejoy's still going on social media, challenging people, and this has become pretty farcical for
Yeah.
boxing. But Char now may have a claim at some point to have a shot at the WBA heavyweight title. And here's where this becomes significant. You're going to have Joshua and Fury fight, presumably, let's say they go through and they have this fight August 14th. Somebody wins the fight, and that person gets all of the four major belts. What you're going to then likely have happen is that a couple of these sanctioning bodies are going to say, well, your next fight has to be against the fighter that we want that's hooked up to the promoters that they are. That would be an unappetizing, not that popular fight. And so now that you're undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, you're going to tell the sanctioning body to go take a walk because you want to have the rematch, the Fury Joshua rematch, or maybe Wilder or somebody like that, or maybe Wilder fights Ruiz and Ruiz gets in the mix. You're going to want some marquee fight, not with somebody that's not that well known. Plus, you have in the WBA the regular champion, the super champion, all this kind of crap. That means that at some point in the next year or two, there's going to be an opening to have a fight for a WBA quote unquote world heavyweight title. And Trevor Bryan is the one who holds, I think, I think it's the regular title. But what it means is that, especially if they start stripping the winner of Joshua and Fury of one of these belts, at which point nobody will care, there might be a fight that some network could bill as for the World Heavyweight Championship, involving Char. And a similar scenario happened with Lennox Lewis in 1999. If you remember the machinations, we'll see how much this is a replay. The first fight between Lewis and Evander Holyfield was officially scored a draw, Madison Square Garden, which was a joke because almost everybody watching had Lewis clearly winning the fight. So then King and the network said, "Oh, well, let's have a rematch." So in the rematch, Lewis got the decision and became the undisputed champion. At that time, that meant only three sanctioning bodies. And then they started saying, you have to fight this guy, you have to fight that guy. And then, of course, Lewis got knocked out by Rockman in South Africa, and then he regained his title again. And at this point, he was only the WBC champion, but everybody regarded him as the undisputed, the real champion after he got his revenge against Rockman. And he stayed that way till 2003. He had the fight with Vitaly Klitschko, which he won on a TKO cut, even though he was losing on the cards. He won it fair and square. And then a few months later, the next year, he announced his retirement. So between 99, except for the period where he was knocked out by Rockman, who was then regarded as number one, then regained it, till he retired, everybody said he's the number one guy in the heavyweight division. We don't care about all these belts. So there were Vladimir Klitschko was fighting for a belt, Chris Bird, John Ruiz, all these different people. That's a scenario that could happen again. And so that's why the chart Lovejoy fight, as absurd and farcical as this is, might have a little bit more importance because now he's fought again. He didn't fight for 4 years. Now the guy got in the ring, even though it was an absurd fight. He got in the ring, he got a knockout, and he's no longer inactive. So he might want to get more fights. But also, it's his condition. We heard he had 2 hip replacements. So what condition will Char be? Certainly doesn't seem to be much of a favorite in anybody he's gonna fight. And all this could open opportunities for other fighters, because if you remember when you had the fight between Tyson Fury and Vladimir Klitschko, and Fury won that decision, and they wanted to do an immediate rematch, and the IBF said, no, you can't do an immediate rematch. You have to fight one of our contenders. And Fury said, who cares? So that the rematch never materialized because of Fury's drug and alcohol problem. Stripped him of the belt anyway, and they organized an IBF World Heavyweight title fight between Glaskov, if you remember him, and the Russian fighter, and the American Charles Martin, which was a dreadful fight. The first 2 rounds, not much happened. It was very even. The scorecards, everybody had something different. And then in the third round, in a fight that Glaskov was expected to win, his knee goes out. And he goes down and he can't continue. So the fight's over and Martin wins by TKO. Then
Wow. Yeah,
Martin,
I know Martin. He used to spar with
yeah,
my heavyweight.
yeah, and nobody regards him as an top tier elite heavyweight, but now he's
Right.
the IBF champion. So there's this guy from the UK that was on track to have a heavyweight title shot named Anthony Joshua, and they said this we got to grab this opportunity. So they set up a fight with Joshua and Martin. Joshua smokes him out in a couple of rounds. Now Joshua holds one of these quote unquote world heavyweight belts, and then he has his fight with Klitschko, and he wins that fight, a thrilling classic fight.
It
And
was a
now
good fight.
all of a sudden Joshua has three of the four heavyweight belts, and we go on and on from there, which he regained from Ruiz, and the WBC champion then was Wilder, who lost it to Fury, and who knows what's going to happen with Wilder. But that's kind of where we're at, and that opportunity with Martin was something that might happen if you have a fight involving Brian and Char or whoever the WBA or one of these other outfits is gonna pick, because that could put somebody on track to have a unified title fight down the line. Who that's going to be, we don't know. Is it going to be Hergovich? Is Dubois going to regain his form? Is it going to be the winner of Alexander Usyk? There are a number, or somebody that's sort of off the radar at this point. There are a number of different opportunities down the road, and that's the way boxing is run. And if it's chaotic, if it's crazy, if it doesn't make any sense, if it's unfair, welcome to boxing.
Welcome to the world of boxing. It
Yep.
is a crazy ass world, that's for sure. Well, Eddie, that's all the time we have today. My brother, thank you so much for the rundown on this past weekend's fight and the update on Joshua Fury fight. And where can the people find you again? Give yourself a little shout out.
Yes, on the social media, which is the best place to find me. I'm using Twitter the most at NHB News. I have a Patreon page where you can subscribe to things. That's patreon.com/ Eddie Goldman, because this kind of irreverent analysis is not something that the boxing media really wants to put on, and the general media is just clueless about these things and don't know to look beyond. They either don't care or they don't know to look beyond the official statements that are put out there and don't know the historical context of these things. And as I said earlier, I'm on Clubhouse now. Yay.
Yay, welcome to
And
Clubhouse, Eddie. You still a
yeah,
party
we're
hat?
going to have to. Did what?
You still have your party hat?
I have to check. I think they give you the party hat for about a week.
Right,
So I guess I do. And you can follow me there. And I'm still using Facebook and Instagram, but
right.
not as much. But you could still, if you need to, if you those are the only ones you're on, you could contact me. And of course, my blog is eddiegoldman.com, and you could check out my media stuff. And we shall see what's happening, because it looks like I think the odds are good now that we're going to see the Joshua Fury fight in a couple of months this year. Not again. We'll wait till it's signed, sealed, and delivered. But that's going to be something. If it is made official and officially announced, and it does take place, I know we're going to be talking a lot about that. And a
Right.
lot of people are going to have opinions of what we can expect. And I do expect to be some rumbling of human rights campaigners
For sure.
about holding this massive event in Saudi Arabia. We'll
Right.
see what happens.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have today, folks. This is Chris Baldwin, aka DJ Tribal. You guys can hit me up at Angry Afro Radio on Twitter and on Clubhouse. I'm at Baldwin Rocks. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks a lot, Eddie. Catch you next time, brother.
Thank you.
All right.
Be
Peace.
well.